So we left off talking about the Emishi people. I know I'm pronouncing a lot of this wrong. Those of you who actually speak Japanese and actually learned about Japanese culture proper, please feel free to correct me on this. But I'm just going to go with it as I read it and what little cursory knowledge of Japanese I have at this time. So the Emishi people, Emishi, almost lost that. Emishi. All right, so let's talk about that. As I said before when we left off, during the early Heian period, the imperial court successfully consolidated its control over the Emishi people of northern Honshu. Again, the northernmost big island. The Emishi were renowned for their horseback archery and guerrilla warfare. This proved extremely effective against the imperial armies. So effective that when they were ultimately conquered, their tactics were immediately assimilated, and so was born the so-called samurai, aka Bushi. Now, this is as good a time as any to have a little bit of a segue here, or excuse me, have a little bit of a rabbit trail here. When it comes to a few things, first off, the horseback archery and guerrilla warfare should have been one of your first clues as to where this was going if you're really familiar with samurais. A lot of people, when they think of samurais, they think of somebody in, a certain type of armor, generally with a mask on and holding, a two-handed katana sword, ready to fight. And that is one way they became over time, but that is not how they started. And more notable and more popular, especially in their origin and even throughout their history, was the fighting on horseback and the horseback archery and all that stuff. So even if you look into Japanese culture today, you will see that sword fighting is still a thing, as is archery. And it should be understood that these two things historically are tied together. When you see, when you see these people, especially doing it on horseback, understand that that is like OG samurai. That is more samurai than standing there in your full armor with your sword in your hand. So when it comes to it, that's a big tip off of where this is headed. And when we look at it again, this warfare style was so effective against the imperial soldiers that it was immediately assimilated as soon as the people were conquered. And that is what became the samurai. Like right there on the spot, samurai were born. They were modeled after the Emishi people. Now, there's a few things that are also tied to these people or this part of history that are going to be important to note later on. But for now, just know that's where samurai came from. Now, of course, as we mentioned before, there was the Taira clan and there was the Minamoto clan. Two different clans that were both essentially mercenary families that were hired to do work. There were other clans as well, but these are two of the biggest ones. And among these clans is where you're going to see, again, this samurai culture blossom and explode, okay, especially as we go on into the future. But just know that that's where it came from. All right. So, also, Bushi. So, we'll get into the words samurai and Bushi and all that stuff. And I think we'll get into it in greater detail later. But just so you know, for now, Bushi means warrior in Japanese. Samurai means to serve or servant. Okay, so it needs to be understood when you guys are thinking about the Tosa as the samurai dog, it means something very different than what you might be thinking. It has a deeper meaning. It has a more nuanced meaning. It has a layered meaning. It has a whole lot to it. And, we'll get into this later, but I just want to be clear that as we get into these words that might seem small, might seem insignificant, when we think of samurai in the West, 9 out of 10 of us are thinking about Tom Cruise. And then those of us who grew up in like the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, admit it, you're thinking of Yoshimitsu. I know I am. not Tom Cruise. But, you know, that's up to you. You know, maybe some of y'all are starting to think about Shogun, the remake of the original, or the original itself. I don't know. But you're not really thinking of servant. You're not really thinking of service. And again, we'll talk about this later, but it needs to be understood that the thing that makes a samurai, their definition, is not simply how good they can fight, how many people they kill, or anything like that. It's service. And if a samurai loses their master through whatever means, they are immediately given a different name. They are no longer a samurai. They are now what's called a ronin. I am looking at the wrong thing and not looking at the camera. Sorry. So when it comes to it, just understanding the Tosa, understanding what they are intended to be, it gets interesting the more we learn about what they're modeled after. Okay, so as we go through this, again, like I said, I'm going to keep on trying to tie this in. Some of this is going to be repetitive. Some of parts we're going to go into different things and different concepts deeper and stuff like that. We will get into this deeper, but for now, just know off the bat, samurai and bushi, two different words, two different things. Samurai is serve, to serve. It's based off of the Japanese word for, or excuse me, the old Japanese word for to serve and servant. Bushi is warrior. There is no samurai do. Okay, do is the way, the code. There is no samurai do because samurai is to serve. There is a bushido, which I know you've heard that word before. Bushido is the way of the warrior. Samurai is a servant. So it needs to be understood how these two things work together and how we'll get into that in a greater detail in a bit. Okay. So, talked a little bit about the Emishi people, talked a little bit about where they were, again, located on the northern part of the northern Big Island, of the most northern Big Island, so northern top half. Why is that a significant thing to remember? Because of Shogun. The word, the whole word. I'm going to butcher this, but I'm going to try it again. I'm going to try it. Sei-i Taishogun. Blah, 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 blah. Try that again. I'm telling you, man, this missing tooth is weird. It makes my tongue do weird things. It's not to say that I would have done this any better with it, though. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, Sei-i Taishogun. So, what does that mean? This is a little factoid. Okay, so I'm going to butcher this name. It's a tongue twister. Otomo no Otomaro. Otomo no Otomaro. Otomo no Otomaro was the first man the imperial court granted the title of Sei-i Taishogun, which translates to Great Barbarian Subduing General, or Eastern Barbarian Subduing Great General. In the year 802, Sei-i Taishogun Sakanoue no Tamuramaro subjugated the Emishi people, who were led by Aterui. So the leader then of the Emishi people, Aterui, was defeated by, I'm going to mess this up, Sakanoue no Tamuramaro. So anyway, why do these names matter? What is going on here? I think it's interesting, that name. Again, later on, the name is going to be shortened, right, to the shorthand Shogun. But knowing what the title is, Sei-i Taishogun, knowing what it means, great barbarian conquering general, or great conqueror of the people to the north of us. It doesn't really sound all that original. Like when you hear it, there's so many things. There's so many things, I think, looking into the culture that we just kind of, oh, hey, that sounds cool, and took in the West. But in actuality, when you look at it, it's like chai tea, where chai means tea. So we're asking for tea, you know? and here we have, Sei-i Taishogun. Sounds really cool. Really just like a title that the imperial court threw at somebody to make them feel important and make sure that they didn't attack them in their sleep to try to get power. No. Instead of, I don't know, something of actual nobility, or I don't know. I just expected more. You just get, oh, great and mighty conqueror of the people to the north. You know what? Anyway, we're going to keep on reading. I would have been offended by that I would have honestly just rather you keep my name. just call me Corey. Good Lord. It just sounds like they're trying so hard, and I don't understand everything about it. I'm sure it had, more meaning than that. I'm gonna stop because I'm just speaking in ignorance right now. Anyway, so we're getting to the end of the Heian period, and we're gonna talk about something. Okay, so hey guys, how are y'all doing? I am in the middle of editing this video, as you can see here. I actually pulled out a clip of this video that, since making the recording for this video, I was actually able to get better information and clarify a lot of the fog in this section. Rather than trying to, read through all that and stuff like that, which would delay the release of this video further, I'm actually just going to put it right up on the screen. It's going to be some freeze frames for you guys. Pause on those frames. It's a decent amount of information. Pause, read what's there, and then, the video will continue on as soon as you're ready. There's going to be several of them because there's a decent chunk of information in there. We're essentially covering from 1156 through 1185. But the reason why we're talking about this section of history is the change in direction. History was going one way, and then due to a turn of events, or several turns of events in this 30-year period, it changed everything we know about Japan to this day. Pay attention to the story changing here by the changing of the definition of what makes a samurai. So let's get back to it.
時こそ来とれ元暦2年3月24日の宇野国に源平両軍船でしてDan-no-Uraにてや合わせとぞさだめける氷泉もろとも三千よそ平家の軍を囲まんと焦り競いて突き進むこの一段ぞ義経のほとんもとなりと知られける平家の先人は九国一の豪の者山鹿の兵道寺秀遠のせい500よそ二人は松浦と300よそも平家の金立ち200よそで三人続きたり 中を突き破れば
Yoritomo, again, Minamoto Yoritomo, and his retainers thus became the de facto rulers of Japan. Okay, so we are going to talk about this. I don't know if I mentioned this later in my notes or not, but we're going to talk about this. Okay, so Yoritomo Minamoto, and I'm saying that's the English way. Individual name first, then last name. Maybe we should just stick to the way they say it in Japanese because I don't want to be too confusing for you guys. So this guy named Yoritomo, right? He leads his family, the Minamoto clan, to victory eventually. Bloody war, lots of lives lost. Part of this war needs to take place in a location called Dan-no-Ura. Here's the deal. When the samurai first came to be, like I said, horseback riding and bow and arrow was the original and the OG samurai. But there was actually another type of warfare that the samurai were known for prior to that. If somebody from that period was to tell you that's how a samurai fights, you'd be like, oh my gosh, no, it's not. You don't know what you're talking about. And the truth of it is that in a way, both of you would be right. Somebody from that era would have known a samurai from the Taira clan that fought focusing on very different things than a samurai from the Minamoto clan. So the way things are done changes by the people whose hands it's in, right? And what we see with the samurai, it actually started off one way and was like that for a while. The Taira clan generally favored a more defensive and naval-based fighting style, relying heavily on archery and their superior fleet, while the Minamoto clan was known for their aggressive, mobile land-based tactics with strong cavalry charges and skilled swordsmanship, often utilizing surprise attacks and flanking maneuvers to overcome their opponents. Key differences. The Taira focus on defense. They have a naval dominance, they have archery prowess, and they have less mobility on land. The Minamoto are offensive aggressively. Think blitz, full court press, etc. They have a swordsmanship expertise. They're extremely adaptable by comparison due to their strengths, and they also focus on very strategic planning. The Genpei War is where these two different fighting styles were most prominent, and the Battle of Dan-no-Ura is the final battle of that Genpei War, and it's where the Taira were defeated. I'm going to talk a little bit about this because I don't see it in my notes, and I think it's kind of relevant information. I think it's really neat. We're going to talk about Yoritomo Minamoto a little bit. So, first things first. Minamoto clan is defeated in the first scuffle in 1156. The clan is reasonably and understandably banished from Japan, not exterminated. In their exile, right, there's a young up-and-comer, this guy named Yoritomo Minamoto. And what he does is essentially kind of put together a rebellion. He, first off, gathers his family members, his clan members, from being scattered into the wind. And then he puts them towards reestablishing themselves as a power in Japan. So it's going to be important later on because it kind of shows his political acumen that was extremely unique among warriors and generals. Think of a general with all the things that make you a very good general, also being gifted as a very, very, very effective politician. These two things don't meet in our minds, especially not in modern times. But that was what this guy was. He was effective at bringing people together, motivating them towards a common goal and leading them on that path. And he did a really good job of that. Now, a lot of what he did also was making promises to people about what would happen and what would be the result of their return to power. And, you know, he had to work to try to make that all come to reality, kind of like political promises, or he had to make sure that, you know, if it didn't come to reality, that the people that he kind of let down were okay with that. But it needs to be understood that this guy successfully united his clan and led them in what would be the changing of Japan's history in one of the most radical and fundamental ways. And we'll talk about it here in a bit. But for now, just know the significance of this 30-year period changed the definition of what it is to be a Bushi in Japan. The Taira clan focused more on defense. They were good at archery, and they were naval warriors. When you think of samurai, you don't think of a boat. You might think of archery a little bit, maybe not, but you do not think of a boat. Okay? The people that made the samurai what you know it to be today were almost wiped out. And just think about that. We're going to talk about how much this became Japan in a moment. But the fascinating part of history there and how the story changed just so radically in its formative years. It was beginning to be the definition of a samurai was a guy who liked boats, had a bow and arrow, was really good at defense. And due to this Minamoto Yoritomo, the Yoritomo guy, it changed to swords and aggressive offense and strategizing and intellect and all that other kind of stuff. Just understanding that is going to be key. I think it's fascinating. I don't know that's necessarily going to be key, but I think it's fascinating. We'll talk about that in a greater detail in a second, but it's just fascinating to me. I wonder if you guys think it's the same. Anyway, we're going to keep going. We're through the Heian period, and we are moving on to the next period. So, thank you guys so very much for checking out our channel, for watching our videos. I hope I wasn't too boring. Thank you for following us or watching us. If you do not already follow us, please follow. If you have not liked this video, please like, and please subscribe, and you'll be able to keep up with the next videos we put out about Tosas. We love what we do here. There'll definitely be more videos. And you can learn a bit more about the breed, learn a bit more about us, and hopefully it'll be stuff that you'll find useful. One other thing I would say is that if you can, please share our information. I know a lot of people will say share, but for us it's actually more important. You may not know this, but the Tosa is what we might consider an endangered species here in the US and even in the West. I would say the place that the place that the Tosa is right now is not unlike the place where the pit bull was in the mid 50s throughout the 70s, in that they no longer are used for their original purpose here in the US. Thank God. They are not used for their original purpose. So that kind of leaves a vacuum. The breed's notoriety is going down in that vacuum, but what that opens the door for is for bad actors to get a hold of what remaining specimens there are and use them for, we'll say, nefarious purposes. And when it comes to it,
This is a wonderful breed. We just barely got the pit bull to where it's like 50-50 publicity, right? I'd hate for the Tosa to be the next dog everybody hates. So please share as much as you can. Get the information out there about the breed. It took so long for the pit bull to make a comeback, not because of breeding and responsible breeding practice. No, there's always been people that have been breeding pit bulls responsibly. You know, what it took was having people in their corner, advocates, people who could stand up and say, that's not the way pit bulls act in reality. That's a dog that's been abused. That's a dog that's been mistreated. That's a dog that's been mistrained. And that can happen to any breed, you know? And the more that those people get out there, the more you see the pit bull coming out in a better light, you know? Unfortunately, it's still got a long way to go, but that was the change. And the same thing is true for the Tosa. We need people who are going to get out there and say, hey, look, that behavior right there, that's not a Tosa. This, that, the other thing, that's not Tosa behavior. This is an example of an unfortunate set of circumstances that befell an individual dog. It is not what is to be expected of the breed as a whole. So when it comes to it, I think it's super important that you share, even more than liking and subscribing, which would be awesome. But share so that the information gets out there and more people learn the truth about the Tosa. All of it, not just the fighting past, but where they are today and where they're heading. Hopefully, more people will see this, more people will share, and the information will be out there. Again, you don't necessarily have to want to get a Tosa yourself, but learn about the breed. We need more advocates. Hopefully, some people watching this will find that true and become an advocate for this wonderful, amazing breed. Thank you guys so much for your time. We'll let you go and enjoy your life and let Mr. Dante get on to his kibble for the day.